This is Binod Shankar and you're listening to the Real Finance Mentor podcast from therealfinancementor.com. The Real Finance Mentor is your go-to resource for insight and inspiration on careers in finance, CFA and more. I would think, why this podcast? Well, my goal is to deliver insight and inspiration for your finance career by making it, one, relatable. This is not theoretical stuff. We zero in on the critical, practical issues. Number two, authentic. No bullshit, no sidestepping. The topics, guests, and questions are all from that perspective. And number three, take a chartered accountant and CFA charter holder, add 17 plus years as a corporate warrior, mix in 10 years of entrepreneurship, throw in a decade of full-time CFA training, add speaking, mentoring, cycling, and mountaineering, and that's me. Welcome to the Real Finance Mentor, or as I call it, RFM. Hello everyone, this is Binod Shankar here with the next episode of the Real Finance Mentor podcast, the podcast that delivers insight and inspiration for your finance careers. As usual, I go far and wide to find just the right guest to be on the show. And today I have someone who was an ex-student of mine and who is going to talk about his experiences in CFA, in Masters in Finance, and of course, very importantly, on Wall Street. Yeah. So my guest today is Hanutosh Baria. Hanutosh basically did his engineering, bachelor's in engineering in electronics and communications from Birla Institute of Technology. And then he did a Master's of Science in Financial Engineering from Claremont Graduate University in California. And he then finished off with the CFA charter, clearing all three levels of the CFA program in 2018. And of course, in terms of his career, and that's what we're going to focus on most of the time today, he, of course, post-graduation as an engineer, spent some time in sales and business development, a brief while, I would say. And then he did his master's and he joined Barclays in New York as portfolio risk reporting analyst, looking at key credit risk metrics, looking at insights on portfolio counterparty moves, and looking at banking and trading book exposures. But then he made a big jump after that, which is interesting because he joined Barclays Capital Incorporated as what he called the investment banking analyst in the Global Industrials Group, where he looks after building models for leverage buyouts, discounted cash flow models, for example, and includes interface with teams including M&A, leverage finance, debt and equity capital markets, and credit risk. And Hanutosh has been involved in quite a few transactions, including LBOs, debt financing transactions, and of course, acquisitions. So it's been an interesting journey for Hanutosh, which is why he's on the show. Hanutosh, very glad to see where you are right now. It's been about 3 or 4 years since I last saw you in class. So impressed and very interested in knowing how you got there. And pretty much that's the whole theme of today's interview.
Thank you, Binod, for this glorious introduction that you gave. I am truly honored. Definitely, it has been a while since we met face to face. I think it was back in 2016. I think that's when I saw you last. It's been, but it's great always catching up. And I think definitely you are one of the key integral parts of my success. I mean, without you and Genesis and your training, I think I wouldn't be anywhere close to where I am. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Cool. Now, before we get to CFA, the charter, and where you are now, I want to ask a very interesting question. How did you get motivated as a freshly qualified electronics engineer to enter finance, given that you knew next to nothing about finance?
I think great question, Binod. I think let's take a step back and add some more color to the story. So per my recollection, the first time I ever heard about finance or remotely anything close to it was back in 2008 or 9 when the great financial crisis was taking place. I think there was a lot of buzz going around as to what's happening. And I just got curious and decided to read up on it as to what's going on. And one thing led to the other, and I stumbled upon the word structured products. And that was pretty interesting to me. And it really fascinated me, and I just read it and I understood what's going on. And that was pretty much the end of it for that point in time, right? Moving moving onwards, I completed my undergrad in 2013 and got a job in an IT consulting firm back in Dubai. Great experience. I got to learn business development sales, but I very quickly realized that this is not something that I want to do for the rest of my life. And that was really great of me to realize that. And so I started talking to one of my friends, and I told him that finance is something that I would consider doing and I find interesting, solely based on something that I had read a few years ago, but wasn't sure if I wanted to like make a full-time commitment to it because I didn't know anything apart from what I had read, right? So he basically suggested, why don't I take his CFA books and give it a read to see if I actually find it interesting. I mean, thank God I didn't start with ethics, but I gave it a read. I definitely read a few chapters from different subjects, and I decided, like, based on the initial read, this is something that I definitely liked just from the thought of what I was reading, and I could definitely see myself doing this as a career. And so this is something that I made a personal choice to make a switch, right? At this point,
Right.
as an engineer, we solve problems, right? I decided to use those problem solving skills to solve the problems in the world of finance. So let's just put it that way. And
so let me come to that point, right? Because and this is what happened, because I've had a few engineering students in my CFA classes, and they have varying experiences. Now, you mentioned to me in an earlier conversation that your electronics engineering degree helped you in your CFA journey. Now, this is very surprising given the huge difference in domains. There's almost very little overlap in terms of topics. So, tell me 3 ways in which your engineering background prepared you for the CFA journey, because I'm sure there are quite a few engineers out there who are thinking about a career in finance and thinking about CFA.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I mean, you heard that right when I said that, like, engineering actually helped me a lot. So engineering in general, right, is an interdisciplinary study where you're taught advanced concepts on mathematics, science, and a little bit of business management here and there, depending on which course you join, right? And essentially, it is then used, like, all your knowledge is then used to, like, design and conduct experiments, identify and solve problems, right, and make things easier. So it's pretty much like a packed 4-year intense program where you're challenged to learn different things and concepts, and then apply it in either forms of assignments, projects, or various different to just test your knowledge, right? And you're consistently tested and challenged on these things, like, and at every level, like, it increases, like, your challenges increase and your complexity increases. So let me give you an example, right? So let's take mathematics as a subject, right? There are various equations, and most of it are actually derived from one thing or the other. It starts from one equation and then you build on it, right? And that just helps you think through different things and how to solve problems, right? And so basically, as I said, like, the equations are derived from one of the other, and there could be always one right answer, but there are multiple ways to get to the right answer, right? And that is something that you're taught during the course. It's not like either it's not a one-way street. You can probably find multiple ways to solve the answer. And that's something that is taught in the course. And I think from my engineering program, something that I really learned and is transferable is basically logic and reasoning. That's one. We are actually taught how one thing relates to the other and how it could be used to look at how you can get to the answer using various different steps. Two are basically I would consider as technical skills, strong technical skills. Like, and what I mean to say is that you're actually given formal training in mathematics and other scientific concepts, which you might not think are useful then, but they're actually relevant to wide variety of concepts. And I can give you an example of that. One of it being, like, stochastic processes. Something that I really remember learning about was stochastic basically means random, right? So in one of my classes in, I think, cellular telecommunication, I still remember this, was that when you transfer data, the way data is transferred is basically you have a header cell, and then there's data between, and there's an ending cell. And when it's transmitted over device, it basically mixes up. So there's a stochastic process used to randomize the data so that no one can hack into it. And then at the receiver end, it's again used to lay out the data again. So this concept is also used in finance for solving for bond volatility or option pricing and so on and so forth. So that's that. And then the third thing that I learned was critical thinking, right? The ability to actually ask questions, like ask why is this happening? Why is this taking place? I think that's a very important thing that you learn, just to
Hmm.
question everything. And that's very transferable, like, to finance and other aspects in other fields as well.
Hmm.
And I think the fourth thing that I learned was just the ability to work under pressure. Like, if I remember correctly, like every semester was approximately 4 to 5 months. We had roughly 6 subjects each semester,
Hmm.
and each subject had like four exams plus labs. So a lot of pressure. Like, every month you're pretty much studying, giving exams, trying to like move on, and the difficulty keeps increasing. So like a lot of work, a lot of deadlines to meet. That's something that you learn to work under pressure.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I think definitely all these above have definitely helped me in my CFA journey. And these are all transferable skills, which
Of
I
course.
feel like having an engineering degree helps just to lay a base in anything you do in life. And I mean, if you just, I mean, to be honest, like engineering is great, but like other fields as well play an important part because they just help you understand or look at things in a different way. I mean, on
Hmm.
Wall Street, I have seen folks coming from history majors, art majors, and
Hmm.
you can from commerce backgrounds, finance backgrounds, and all of them are put into investment analysis, and that's just because of the way they look at different things, and
Right.
that's something that's most important to
Right. Right.
understand.
Yeah. I mean, I recall you struggled a lot initially in my FRA class in level one, right?
I
As
I
it
definitely
was a
don't deny that.
vast and alien topic for you, I'm sure. I recall you coming to me with very
Yeah,
anxious look on your face,
yeah, absolutely.
and I think you also failed level one CFA once.
Yeah, yes, I did.
Now, this must have affected your motivation. So my question is, what are the three thoughts? If you want to
Mhm.
boil down the essence of what made you persevere through this alien, complex,
Mhm.
vast domain and ultimately come out successful?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, I definitely failed level one. That's something I actually cherish. And it was like my first time in my life that I'd actually experienced failure. And that was something very difficult to deal with because all these years, maybe like 20, 21 years of your life, you're breezing through things and you're like, okay, I know what I'm doing, and then you're dealt a hard hand, and
Hmm.
you don't know what to expect, right? And especially like I got a band 10 in my level one, which was like so close to passing. And I was like, oh my God, how did I not pass? Right. So
Hmm.
definitely really demotivating when I got to know my results because I wasn't expecting failure, right? I mean, no one expects failure as such.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I'm actually thankful for my failure because it actually gave me a reality check and it made me understand where I'm going wrong, right? So
Hmm.
at that time in my head, I knew like, how did I overcome this? Was basically I knew like failure wasn't an option. I tried something totally different and I failed, and that is okay with me to fail as long as you keep getting up and trying on and moving on with it. And then second thing was this was something that I really wanted to do, and if I just gave it up on my first try, I mean
Hmm.
there would be nothing. I would probably be left as to where I was, and I would not be able to
Hmm.
pursue my dream. So I had to like keep pushing through it. So
Hmm.
these were some of my motivation factors. Of course, like my parents and my friends just pushed me through it, and of course, you were like a very good motivation to me at that point of time that it's
Hmm.
okay to fail. And I mean, in even like in day to day life, I feel it's okay to fail as long as you get up and keep trying on and move on with it.
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean, the CFA journey must still be vivid in your mind. I know it's what I've qualified in 2015, and I still remember my level two and level three journeys vividly, right?
yeah.
So tell me the top challenge in each of level one, level two, and level three that you faced, and one way how you cracked each level.
Yeah, so I think you're right. Like uh, every CF, every level of the exam poses a different and a unique set of challenges, and as you progress with them and you level up, it just gets tougher and tougher. So let's start with
Hmm.
level one, right? Like level one for me was absolutely like a new curriculum. Every subject that I went through was absolutely new. Never like study anything, maybe except for like some statistical concepts like mean, median, average, which everyone knows about it. So I guess I was pretty much brand new to this. So for me, level one was basically about building the base, just in general, like learning uh, from ground up what finance is, learning about the factoids, understanding what time value of money is, different concepts in corporate finance, and so on and so forth. And the toughest subject for me was FRA, I think, out of everything. I had
Yeah.
no idea what a balance sheet looks like. And I think now that I think about it, how much of an impact it has made to me in my day-to-day life. I mean, at that point, I thought I would never want to do anything remotely close to FRA. And now in what I'm doing, it's pretty much like my daily bread and butter. So as I was saying, like as I was initially struggling to understand what I was going through, and I was trying to just learn, like, it's like to memorize concepts rather than
Mhm.
actually making a conscious effort of understanding them. And once I realized that memorizing is not going to help me, I started taking a different approach to every subject, including FRA, right? Instead of hating the subject, I started showing interest towards it, trying to join the dots as to like what it's trying to show me and
Mm.
teach me, right? And then it just became easier to understand what was happening. And as I mentioned earlier, like I had failed in level one. So the second time around, I knew I was very close to understand. I knew I was very close to passing, and I just had to pay attention on what my weak subjects are,
Mm.
realize that where I made mistakes, and made sure that I was strengthening those areas before moving on. There was no knowledge gap, right? If something was trying to be taught to you, you understood that.
Mm.
And I was also like less stressed out. Like initially, I was more stressed out. When you're in stress, you sometimes don't end up thinking the right way. So this time, I was less stressed out, which made things
Yeah.
much better for me.
Mm.
And I remember that. I mean, we had a chat after I failed level one, and you gave me a game plan as to what to do next, and I pretty
Mm.
much stuck to the game plan to make sure, like there was no knowledge gaps. I understood what was being asked for in each LOS, and I think what was trying to teach me before moving on. And I think the most important thing was practicing, right? Like, yeah, sure,
Mm.
you learn everything, but the best way to remember it and actually apply it is actually through practice, actually solving multiple questions. So I think I made sure I solved across all levels. I made sure I solved all the end of chapter questions, the blue box examples. I actually went back to understand if I missed out on something. So that was like level
Mm.
one.
Right.
I think I gave my level one again in December 2014. Yeah. And so I got my results in end of Jan 2015, and I passed. I was pretty happy about that. Uh, that I moved on from the base level. Now it's like level two, right? Now this level kind of poses a different challenge altogether, right? It's a
Mm.
vast syllabus. Now we have learned the basic fundamentals, the basic building blocks of each subject, what it is. Now level two teaches you all about valuation, right? It's a vast subject. I think if I remember correctly, uh, the curriculum size is approximately 1 to 2 times larger than level one. It's very vast and in depth, and it's a tough process, right? And now the game has changed because now it's no longer like one sentence or two sentence questions with three answers. It's more like a case study. You actually read a big case study, understand, synthesize the information given to you at different parts, and then try to apply that together in solving the exam, right? So I knew this was back in Feb 2015, and the exam was June first week 2015. So like roughly 3 to 4 months left. I knew I had no time to waste, and I had to make sure that I wanted to make sure that I understood everything what I was reading and did not underestimate the exam because I knew what kind of a beast it was. So when I was preparing for my exam, I think I first started reading I completed my first reading by end of April, made sure I practiced enough questions, did all the blue box examples, end of chapter questions, and gone through most of like questions and did it over and over again till I was comfortable. Now, for my level two, right, my game strategy was to nail down FRA and equity because at that time those were the heavier weighted subjects in the exam, followed by focusing on other subjects which were like in rank after those, like fixed income, corporate finance, ethics, quants, and that's how it went on. And I made sure to practice a lot of questions. Most importantly, like time myself. It's very important. Like you have a big something to read, like you have a big case study to read and then answer the questions. It's not easy, and it's definitely making sure like I answered each question approximately in 3 minutes before moving on. And so yeah, I think I basically finished my second reading of Schwezer notes by first week of May, and now basically I had pretty much 3 weeks left for the exam, and all I was doing in that time was revising my formulas, getting up every day in the morning, writing down. It took me like an hour and a half. I'd find time, like write down each and every formula so I remember and understand each and every formula as to when it's asked. And then basically just going over the secret sauce, practicing multiple CFA mock exams, and just getting ready for the exam. I mean, at this point, like you just have to focus. You just know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. There's no way you can learn anything new in the last 1 week. So I was mostly focusing on what I knew my strengths, and just, you just go and give the exam. There's no way you know that you're going to nail the exam or not, because level 2 and level 3 are like totally humongous in your syllabus. And yeah, so that was it. And I passed my level 2 back in my first attempt in 2016 June. And yeah, that was definitely a big victory for me. Now moving on to level 3. So level 3, I gave it in June 2018. I think almost 2 years post my level 2, while I was working at Barclays. As I went to the US and to do my master's, I did realize that it wasn't a good idea to study CFA and complete my master's at the same time. So level 3 was basically pushed back a little bit, but I definitely wanted to make sure that I cleared, because this was like the last hurdle. Now that you've cleared all 2/3 of the way, it does make sense to do the last thing again, like last level again. So level 3, right, was again a different challenge again. And in this case, in level 1, like, you learn the factoids, you learn various subjects and basic concepts. Now in level 2, when you build on those concepts and you learn valuation and how they combine and play together. And now level 3 is when you start thinking like a portfolio manager, right? You basically use what you have learned in your level 1 and level 2, plus everything was taught in level 3, and put it together and think of how you're going to manage the whole portfolio. Now it's no longer like a particular subject. Now everything is combined together and asked multiple questions. You can be asked questions on anything, right? And you should be able to answer that. So, and to top it off, level 3 has a slightly different exam layout, where in the morning half of the session is a written exam, and the evening half is the multiple choice, which is what you're familiar to from level 2, which is also very important, right? And what something that I realized from in that exam is that you cannot write stories in your morning section of the paper. People want to see to the point, concise answers highlighting important facts. And if it's like a numerical, you make sure you write your formula down, you write different steps, and you get the answer. So in case, somewhere down the line you missed up some decimal or something goes wrong in your arithmetic, that's fine. At least the examiner who's checking your paper knows where you stand, and you know the formula, and he'll give you partial credit, if not full. Hoping that's always a hope, right? If you write like 2.3 as an answer, if it's completely wrong, you lose out all the points. Basically, you don't get full credit for it. So the biggest challenge for me was like to think like a portfolio manager and write concise answers. And that did not happen overnight, of course, because the last time I wrote was pretty much when I was in my master's program. And at work, you barely use a pen or a pencil to write anything down. It's usually your keyboard and how you think about it. So what I did was basically I started to practice to write answers in the exam format over time. I saw the solutions from what was provided in the CFA curriculum and try to match that similar layout for answering the questions. And over time, I got the hang out of it. And my strategy for level 3 was basically to tackle the biggest subjects that were private and institutional wealth management first, and followed by others based on the weighting. And I was using practice tools provided by CFA and Schwezer. And I made sure I did not also lose sight of the multiple choice questions, because those you still have to be fast in that, and you have to get those answers right. And I also made sure that I was making very few to minimal mistakes on problems, like numerical problems. And that's because there's only one answer, and you either get it right or wrong. There's no two ways. So, and that's a sure shot. If you get it right, if you know the formula, those points are yours. So I want to make sure that I capture every point on that aspect, and also get good at what I was doing otherwise as well. So in level 3, like for CFA, I had to become more consistent and just understand the exam concept and just write the answer. But something that's a common theme that I've seen across all 3 levels is that apart from it getting harder each level, you as a person have to be more consistent, diligent, and how to be smart towards how you approach the exam. And you at least for me, I used to take out like 2 to 3 days, 2 to 3 hours a day on a work day after my work to sit down and study for the exam. And on the weekends, like I think for all the exams. I used to put in like 7, 8 hours every weekend to make sure I am catching up and understanding syllabus and
Mm-hmm.
going through all the materials and absorbing it. Yes. So that was my journey.
Yeah. That's quite a journey, of course, and thanks for narrating it in so much detail. I think it will be useful
Yeah.
to anyone aspiring to write level 1 or 2 or 3. Now, while you
Thank
were
you.
doing CFA, you thought one challenge is not enough, and enrolled during the level 3 journey while you were doing level 3 for the masters in financial engineering program from
Correct.
Claremont. So I've got three
Yes.
questions for you, and we'll go through each one after the other,
Mhm.
right? So my first question is, why a master's, that too an expensive US one,
Mhm.
wasn't
Correct.
CFA enough?
So I think like there are a couple of reasons for that, right? Like considering my background in engineering and only cleared CFA level 2, not a lot of people or employers, I would say, considered me seriously as a candidate for pursuing any role in finance because I didn't have a full degree, I would say, in finance. So that was one reason. So I decided like to pursue. I think now would be a good time if I wanted to make a full career switch from engineering to finance to actually get a formal degree or education, if you say, which will help me secure more knowledge, plus the certification required or like a check mark that okay, this guy has certified in this, and we can actually consider him for other positions as well. So back in 2015, when I was in Dubai, I was looking for some roles, but I did not find any roles that was of
Hmm.
interest or in finance. So I decided maybe now is a good time to do my master's first and then come back and look at how things go.
Right.
So that was my first
Yeah.
motivation.
So my second question here, yes, is so masters in financial engineering. Now, what did you specifically learn in the masters that
Mhm.
wasn't in the CFA program? I'm sure there was not a complete overlap. There must be there would have been overlap some to some extent.
Correct.
But what is that you learned that you would not
Mhm.
have learned in the CFA program?
So, so I think my master's in financial engineering program, in my opinion, was helpful, and that was because like the program was basically split into two parts. So, first part was finance that you learned in your CFA, and then the other part was mathematics, right? So, we first learned the financial theory of what was taught in CFA, and then definitely there were some other areas which kind of went deeper than the CFA curriculum. And apart from that, there was a lot of project work, like forming your own equity analysis, portfolio management training given to you. So it's like you learn this in class, and then you have to do projects or assignments to actually apply what you learn. And that's something that is, that will help you get ready for your real life job. Like you study equity analysis or valuation. Now you're as a company, read through its financial like statements, 10K, what's the industry doing, write up an equity research, and tell me why is it a good, bad, or any kind of investment thesis. Just to get it started, right? And that's something that would kind of help you in your day-to-day life, in your real work life. And apart from that, the other half of the course was basically learning the mathematical side of finance, like studying stochastic calculus, time series, probability, and other subjects which actually taught you how that back-end formula is derived. Like CAPM is one formula, but it's like you see it in the book as like one line statement, but it's not. No one came up with that one line statement. There is definitely a lot of math involved behind it, and that's something that we learned of how do you use mathematics to actually adjust an option pricing theorem for volatility. How do you calculate different bond prices using various equations and so on and so forth. So and also we learned a lot of programming and other data science tools, which were like complementary to my knowledge in finance. So it kind of like evolved you into a broader skill set. So my master's program as like also gave me access to my school's network and brand name. So a
Hmm.
lot of my alumni who were graduated were great resources to talk to. My school had connections with other firms which were like actively employing. So that was also a good way uh, resources and resources when you're looking for a full-time opportunity. So in
Right.
my opinion, I guess like it was useful for me, but for people who are already in the industry of finance and want to do this forever, I don't think there is a need for them to do masters. Yeah, CFA for sure will help you get wherever you want, but that would probably be it. The knowledge is great, but if you're already in the industry, don't plan to switch out of it. I think your CFA would just be fine.
So basically, what you're saying, Hanutosh, is if you want to break into finance, core finance, and you're not working in finance, then masters helps open doors that a CFA would not help open for you.
Correct. Like, I think the way the world works, or at least what I've seen, is that they at least look for, like, if you want to get into finance, an MBA is required, or like a CFA, or some formal education is required. And for me, that was the bridge that I wanted to uh, complete. Like, I just want to bridge the gap that I had in my resume, and that was pretty much what I did. And also gained in that process, gained a lot of knowledge, made a lot of friends and professional connections.
Right. Which of course brings me neatly to my next question, right? And something I've always wondered, how is the CFA program and the CFA charter regarded on Wall Street? I mean, specifically, where is it highly regarded and relevant, and where is it
Sure.
less so?
So I think from what I've heard and what I've seen, I think the CFA charter refers to the gold standard in finance across the street, but it's specifically highly regarded in asset management, equity research, credit research, and other various risk management roles. You'll actually see job descriptions mentioning that CFA designation or progress towards your CFA charter is highly preferred. And like in your asset management field, I think clients also, from what I've heard, clients feel more comfortable dealing with CFA charter holder, at least giving the thought that this guy knows what he's doing, if nothing more. That's what, I guess I would like conclude by saying, like, asset management, equity research, credit research, and various other risk management roles is where your CFA charter comes to play. And it's highly regarded that even if you don't have one, they'll actually make you get one over time. So that's something.
Right.
But I think the other places where it's not that relevant is like, investment banking, private equity, hedge funds, trading roles. Those roles kind of don't mandate a CFA designation. Although the knowledge you learn is very important and useful, but it's just like, it's the charter is not mandated. You can still do in that industry without having the charter.
Right. So so we're neatly segueing into investment banking, right, which you mentioned just now. So your engineering degree was done, got your CFA charter, and finished your master's in financial engineering. And I want to talk about this move of yours into investment banking in a big firm on Wall Street. Now, although you didn't come from a target school, i.e., the Harvards or Stanfords or MITs, which is typically where the big investment banking firms hire from, you still got investment banking in a big firm on Wall Street. Now,
yes,
I know you didn't get into investment banking directly post your master's in financial engineering. So tell me exactly what you did and how to get to IB.
Correct. So I think it's a long journey, and I think let me explain to you step by step. So as an international student, my first priority was to secure a job, right? So when I was graduating in 2017, but I started networking a year prior to my graduation. I started adding people on LinkedIn, connecting with them, and reaching out to learn more about what they do, what their background is, and just to learn more about the job, and just to make a connection in general. I would actually never ask them for a job, like right up. I would actually go there and actually try to learn what they are doing and what they do, and ask them genuine questions regarding their background and the day-to-day duties, and form meaningful relationship. In the same time, I was trying to understand, is this something that I wanted to do, or from what I heard is something that I like, right? That's the starting point. And then I also attended a lot of networking sessions hosted by CFA and my grad school. So that kind of helped me make more connections. And you meet various working people. I would exchange my cards with their cards, make sure I follow up with them with an email saying that, hey, I met you yesterday, it was great meeting you, and I'd love to catch up sometime soon again. And just keep maintaining a connection. It's very essential. Like, over time, getting your name out there is in the market, and getting recognized over time is something that was my starting step. And I always used to follow up with whoever I reached out after a few weeks or months, saying that it could be related to anything, right? The follow-up doesn't mean that I'm again pestering them on the same thing. I would basically go and I would see an interesting article that was relevant to their field, and I would ask them questions. Or it could be as simple as, happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, have a great year, we should probably connect in the upcoming year. And that basically just kept me in front of their eyes and in their minds, so that anything comes up, they would probably think about me. And that was like that's what I was doing. And at the end of it, it's always a numbers game, right? The more people you reach out to and connect, the higher your chances are getting closer to an interview and landing a job. So similar thing I did to secure my first role at Barclays as well. Back in 2016, February, I was visiting New York and I happened to ask one of my professors, do we have any distinguished alumni who I can meet over the next 1 week, or who he could introduce me to when I was making my trip to New York. And he mentioned that one of our professors at that time, whose teacher at Claremont, was also the chief risk officer of Americas at Barclays. And I was like, yes, absolutely, I have to meet him. And he connected me, and he fortunately agreed to meet me. And I went to New York, I met him, and that was like my start of my friendship with him. And that was the beginning. And over time, when he came to Claremont, I used to always go say hi to him, at least just have a conversation with him to make sure that I was there, attend his classes, made sure I did good. And, we kind of bonded apart from the classes and the formal setting just as friends over time. And then now fast forwarding a year ahead to February 2017, I was actually looking for a job. Now it's coming closer to graduation. My thing was to land a job before I graduate, so I don't have the headache after that. So I was focusing really hard on that. And I was talking to one of my seniors at that time. He had graduated and he was actually working at Barclays. So I reached out and he said, "Hey, there's this role coming up in my team. You might actually like it." And he told me about the role. So I actually enjoyed it from what I heard. And I reached out to my professor saying that, "Hey, I heard from my fellow colleague or my friend that there's this role in Barclays, and would it be possible for you just to make an introduction with me apart from him to someone else within the firm?" And he actually made the connection, and it was one of the heads of that department where the role was opening up. And the person and I actually had a conversation for an hour and a half, and we actually enjoyed speaking with each other. And that basically led on to other things. I met with other 4 or 5 folks and had such conversations, and one thing led to the other. Those were my 4 or 5 interviews that I had, and landed a role in my portfolio credit risk team. And that was my first role at Barclays. Now, basically, I had been at the organization for a year or so. And after completing my CFA level 3 in June 2018, I decided I wanted to move into a front office role where I could actually, use the knowledge that I'd gained through a formal training, and decided to pursue a career in investment banking. So as I was already an employee of Barclays, it was kind of slightly easier because I knew which people worked where and what departments they were part of. So I actually started networking. I repeated the same process. Basically, I started networking with senior managing directors within the firm in areas where I wanted to be a part of or what I thought was interesting. And I sent out just cold emails asking them, hey, for informational chats, and wanted to learn more about their work and background. And I think if I had to take a guess, I must have easily messaged more than 100 MDs plus, easy across various teams that I was passionate about joining. And my hit rate was 50%. Some people would reply back, some people were busy. That's fine. I understand. I totally understand that, and I just always follow up. And through my networking again, one thing led to the other. Someone reached out saying that, hey, there's this role opening up in my team. Would you be interested? And I said yes, absolutely. And I interviewed. I think 6 interviews later, I landed my job in investment banking. So yeah,
that's quite an interesting journey. I mean, as I mentioned to you in our earlier talks as well, I think quite a few things that youngsters can learn from. Now, talking about youngsters, Hanutosh, one of the biggest fears that youngsters have is that of approaching senior professionals and asking for help, because they might either get a rude response or worse, probably no response at all. Yet you did that repeatedly in your journey, all the way from masters to investment banking, right? So explain to me, what was your mindset here?
Correct. Absolutely. So I think my mindset was very simple, right? I had a vision in mind and I wanted to get there. And I knew my final outcome. And networking was a great way to learn about new people, new areas within the bank, or new areas within the industry itself, form professional relationships. And in turn, it could end up someday getting someone to like you and going for an interview, right? So at every time that I was looking for a job, either in risk or investment banking, I formed meaningful relationships with someone in that field, understanding what they do, then analyze this. Is this something that I want to do for the next few years of my life? And then pursuing it after. So when I wanted to make a switch in investment banking, I was very clear of what I wanted to do. That was number one. So then I came up with an elevator pitch, right? A 2 minute story on why, what my story is, what my background is, and what my experiences are, and how they have led me to where I am, and how my experiences will help me go further, and I could be a right candidate for this role. So I had to explain my story very well. I had my reasons to why I want to do this, and why I would be considered a good candidate for this. That was very important, right? You essentially have to sell yourself, right? At the end of it, anything and everything you do in life, in one way or the other, is sales. Like, you want a job, what are you doing? You're actually pitching yourself and your skills to an employer. That's in a way sales, right? So as I embarked on this journey, I think some things that I found interesting was like, one, I found out, like, I made sure which teams within investment banking were of interest to me. That's one. And two, who were the senior folks in the team, and who I should connect with. That those were the key strategies that I implemented. And my thought process was slightly different, and non-conventional. Usually when people approach, they decide to talk with the junior people first, and in the team, and then work their way up, right? I decided to do the other way around. I thought, like, if I actually wanted to live in someone's house, I don't want to. It didn't make sense to ask the person who was renting the house, rather than ask the owner who owns the house, can I live in your house? So I pretty much used the same analogy and decided to reach out to the gatekeepers of the team, or like the heads of the team. So I only reached out to like senior managing directors or heads of the teams. I was very careful in my approach as well. Like, they are very busy people, and I don't want to waste their time. And if I got a chance to speak with them, I don't want to mess it up. So when I met them in person, I made sure, like, I had my story patted down, completely knew it. I knew my reasons why I want to do this, why I would be a good candidate, and actually come up with interesting questions to ask them. Something like, if they worked on a really good deal, I would love to know, like, what was the most challenging part of the transaction, or what was going through their minds, and asking questions which were not found online, or basically just saying, not asking generic questions, right? So that was basically that. That's how I got to, like, learn more about that. And in my head, essentially, right, I think this is, let me relate networking to something that we learn in CFA, right? Networking is like a free call option, right? Where there is no premium that you have to pay for it, and there's only potential unlimited upside to this. So let me explain it a little further, right? So if you reach out to network, right, the best thing that could happen is that you meet the person really likes you, you potentially get called for an interview, and ultimately, if you crack all the rounds, you get hired for the job, right? That is unlimited upside in my case. The worst thing that could actually happen is you won't get any response received from them, and you still stay at the same place where you are. Essentially, in my head, this would probably be the most profitable trade that anyone could actually get into, and it's free of cost. You just have to reach out and ask. And of course, like, initially I was concerned of reaching out to seniors, but the sooner I realized that they are human beings, and I had nothing to lose, the more I implemented my strategy. The only thing that I had to do was basically to prepare on why I wanted to do this, and wanted to be excited to learn from what they had to say. So yeah, that was how I did it.
Fascinating. Now, Hanutosh, it seems that given your narration of your journey, that knowing the right
Hmm.
people played as big a part as having the right credentials. Um,
Absolutely.
Now, going forward, a tight job market, lots of
Hmm.
supply, limited demand from employer side. Absolutely is essential that youngsters quickly understand the basics of networking. So, given your experience, can you list your top five networking tips for youngsters who are
Yeah.
ambitious and smart, but a bit
Mhm.
naive about how to proceed?
Sure, absolutely. So I think, like, the first step that is that before you start networking, you should only pick one or two jobs, maximum of two jobs that you want to pursue, and not more than that, because when you narrow down the scope, it makes it much easier for you to network and easier to prepare. If you're choosing like five different fields, you got to learn five different subjects, and that's not the best way to use your time and resources. So that's one, like, narrow down on the jobs like that you really like, and have it ranked like number one, ranking one and two, like that's how you start. And then Second, I would say is that you should never be afraid to reach out to people and connect, however senior or junior they are. This is the only way you will actually get yourself out there and be marketable and presentable in front of people. They will not know who you are till you actually reach out to them, right? Third is basically, I would say, know your audience, right? If you are speaking to someone who's working in, let's say, risk management, right? And if you ask them about a job in asset management, that would be a waste of their time and your time, right? As he basically would feel that you have not done your homework to understand where he works. And two is that he actually might be limited in that capacity to help you out because he's in a different field and you're asking help from him to go in a completely different field. So that's very limiting. Uh, Next is basically, I would say, like, never ask for a job, rather be genuine in connecting with the person to learn more about the field he is in, what he is doing, and forming a meaningful relationship. Yes, down the line, if things work up and you've shown interest and made a strong impression, he'll definitely keep you in mind, and that's how you pop up. And basically, if you form a really good relationship, I would remember, oh yeah, this person reached out to me. I think he might actually be good for a role. Let me just ring him up and see if he's still interested or available for this position, right? The next thing I would say is, like, networking is, like, not like a one-time exercise when you just reach out to people, connect with them once, and expect miracles to happen or take place. It's networking is more like a long-term investing. Like, you actually have to invest in this process. It's a very long-term process where you keep in touch with people. Like, just, it could be anything, right? Just being in front of them, and over time it will actually reap benefits. And like, last but not least, like, is that when you are speaking to someone senior, make sure you have your story padded down as to why you want to do this, what makes you a good candidate, and always have some interesting questions, and not some generic questions that you can find answers to online. Because, like, the first question they'll ask you is like, okay, why do you want to do this? And if you fumble or don't have a right answer, I would just be like, okay, this is just someone regular who is just looking for any job, and he's really not interested in this one, and he's just reaching out generally. So you are, and I think so that's something that's very important, to, like, know your story and why you want to do this. And also, like, you're trying to learn as much as possible about the field when you go out there and network. So you have to, like, and the best way to do it is basically asking questions that, and which also shows curiosity to the person who you're talking to, right? And that kind of makes them think, okay, this guy's actually interested in this.
Right, right. Now you've been in investment banking, Hanutosh, for nearly
Yeah.
1.5 years, and have been involved, if looking at your resume, in quite a few big deals, including leveraged buyouts,
Yeah.
acquisitions, debt financing, right? So I've got a
Yep.
few questions for you. Firstly, because a lot of youngsters see investment as a very sexy field, investment banking, and they
Yeah.
all say they want to get a break into IB, but
Yep.
most of them have no clue of
Mhm.
skill set IB demands. So, what are
Mhm.
the top three skills, i.e., aptitude,
Okay. All right.
that you must have to succeed?
Okay, so I think the most important skills, right, is technical skills. Like, you can say, like, accounting, valuation. Those are very important. That's your daily bread and butter, and you should. That's the bare minimum requirement. That's not even a requirement for you to get selected. Like, if you, it's like a tick mark. Like, okay, he has it. Like every other candidate, who's interviewing will know his technical skills. So that's the first place to start with. Uh, but that's not the only thing, right? Second thing, what is, like, an aptitude wise, like, I would say, like, taking initiative. Like, when, if something work comes along, like, you should be able to, like, be the first person, like, raise your hand, say that you would do it. And but you should kind of always have to be careful when you say yes, because if you try pleasing everyone or saying yes to everything, you're essentially setting yourself up to failure, as there are only 24 hours in a day, and those deadlines are rarely shift, right? Third thing I would suggest is, like, attention to detail, because sometimes, like, the devil is in the details. Like, you might not pay attention to it, but, like, at the end, that could actually make it a break or a, like, win or lose situation for you. Third, I think, or like, the fourth thing I would say would be, like, problem solving and critical thinking is something that's very important. Quite a few times you'll be given work, uh, and you'll be expecting that you would be taking out on this work from someone else and helping them out, making them relieving them of this duty, and, like, helping them think of bigger picture stuff. So in this case, of course, they'll guide you and help you, but sometimes, most times, people are busy in other things, and you might not get constant attention. So for you to actually able to, like, solve the problem given to you or think critically, That's very important, and that kind of shows that if you can do that, okay, we are giving him some responsibility. He's able to do that. Let's move forward and give him higher responsibility. I think that's what they say, right? Like in banking, like before we help you merge two companies, show me complete this simple task before you actually end up doing something very heavy. So gaining the trust is very important of a person.
Right. So that was top three aptitude or skills that you need, right? What
Correct.
are the top three attitude in terms of your
Yeah.
approach to work that you must have in IB to succeed?
So I think like something that's very important is like, your soft skills, like your personality, how you speak, how you connect with people, how you present your work is very important. At the end of it, like any job that you do is requires some sort of like personal connection. And if you're an easy person to work with, that's much better for you and everyone compared to not being an easy person to work with. Two would be like, you should always ask questions, like show that you're eager to learn. Like if you don't understand anything, sure, take out the first 10-15 minutes to understand it or do it by yourself. But if you don't, always ask questions as to why is this happening, can you show me how it's done, or anything that you don't understand. It just shows that you're eager to learn, right? And third thing I would say is like when you actually join, you may not know anything or everything at all, and that is okay as long as you're willing to put the effort and learn. That's something that's most important. And then the fourth thing I would say is like humility and being humble, right? Like showing excitement in your job, uh, not being arrogant, like being responsive to people when they email you right away. At least telling them, hey, like, look, I got this. I saw your email. I'll get back to this later on in the day or whenever you get time. That at least that way people know you've read their email and they're not consistently worried that have you got my email or not, right? So yeah. So essentially, like as a beginner, like you don't bring a lot to the table, but you're expected to bring excitement and eagerness to learn. And I think if you have these qualities, I think you're definitely, set up for success. And I think the
Mhm.
last but not the least, and I think is having a great work ethic, always showing up on time, like meeting your deadlines, always extending a helping hand to the team. I think that goes a long way. So yeah.
So, what are the three things you like the most about your job as an investment banking analyst?
I think something that I really like about my job or truly love about my job is the kind of work we do. At the end, like me and my team or my team, which I'm part of, are actually providing strategic advice to clients, and those are big corporations on mergers, acquisitions, debt and equity raising, divestitures, and so on and so forth. That's something that's really interesting to me. Second thing is basically you actually get to meet and get to be on calls with CEOs, CFOs, and other senior executive members in the in in various companies, and you get to learn a lot from what the way they are thinking about things. And this is something that you don't get to see in a normal job or like a day to day. Like you will on your daily in no normal like it's a very rare opportunity, I would say, given like you're being able to sit with them and understand the way of thinking and being able to learn from them as well. And I think the third thing is like you work in a very fast paced environment. You work with intelligent people. You work across various sectors within the industry. You learn about a lot of companies. You build knowledge as to on different products, different industries, segments, and how they operate in a bigger picture scheme. And also like as a bank, where you sit in the big picture and how you facilitate and help your clients out for the greater good. So that's something that's really interesting that I actually
Mm,
like about my job.
mm, mm. Now let's talk about work readiness, so what they call employability, which
Absolutely.
is one of my one area which I'm very keen on. Right
Hmm.
now, you said in a previous chat that we had a few weeks ago with me
Correct.
that there is a gap between theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge, and one should learn to close the gap. Now, in
Absolutely.
your case, what were the gaps that you discovered after entering
Mhm.
investment banking, and how did you close this?
Okay, so great question. I think CFA or any professional qualification, right, gives you the theoretical knowledge and understanding of how things are done, and that's only one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is to actually take that and put it in practice or actually implementing it, right? That's stage one is to learn, understand the theory. Stage two now is to actually put it in practice, right? So let me give you an example, right? The CFA curriculum by itself teaches you accounting, valuation techniques, like trading multiples, transaction, DCF. to some extent talks about an LBO and so on and so forth, right? But in the CFA curriculum or questions, right, all of the data points required by you are already given to you. Like sales is given, growth rate is given, like uh, sometimes like you got to calculate your return on equity, but like most of the times it's given to you, or like it's easy to calculate. It's a one-step process to come up with the answer and then solve. And so you are essentially everything is given to you in a platter to solve the answer and get the answer, right? That's great. But now when you like transfer it to a daily work situation, when you're doing the same DCF analysis, you got to start by like collecting data from your 10K or 10Q or investor presentations that are available online. Then you actually end up making a full-blown financial model and then perform the valuation analysis. And that's a much longer process, right, than what was taught in our CFA. At the end, the result is the same, but it's a longer process to actually use Excel to actually implement it. So those are kind of the gaps that I identified, and those are the additional steps you need to take to transform your theoretical knowledge into practical knowledge, right? So in my experience, basically, I also had a similar experience where I had studied all of this in theory, but actually never applied this in practice, right? So there was a steep learning curve, and it is a fast-paced environment. You're given things, you got to learn things really quick and being able to deliver because deadlines cannot get pushed back. So initially, I would spend actually a lot of time first just refreshing my theoretical knowledge, but then also spending all my weekends just building financial models and just using different accounting concepts, valuation concepts, and putting it in practice. So I'll just literally take on any company's 10K, build out a 3-statement model, forecast it ahead, use various valuation techniques to value a company, and just keep practicing that over and over till it essentially becomes second nature. And that's how basically you bridge your gap from having a theoretical knowledge now putting in practice. Yeah.
Great. Now, I asked you in our earlier talk whether you had any regrets on education and career, and you
Yeah.
said no. Now, that is unusual because almost everyone has at least one regret. I know I have several, right?
All
Even
right.
the mighty Jeff Bezos of Amazon says you should minimize regret and you can't eliminate regret, right?
Correct.
So tell me briefly how you achieved regret nirvana.
I think it's a great philosophical question, but from my standpoint, right, the way I look at it is slightly different. Like I personally feel that all the experiences, good or bad, from my undergrad to where I am today, have a common theme, and that basically is that from every stage I've learned something, and that was useful to apply to the next stage, right? And I'm actually grateful for that. Like if I did something and I did not like it, I found out the reason as to why I not like it. And now I know, okay, this is something that I don't want to do in the future. And I make corrections or amendments to it. And it's kind of a learning process. And if I like something, then I'd make sure, okay, I like it. Now let me put in more effort to make myself better at it. So I always believe like in trying everything out. And it's okay. Like, sometimes you fail, that's totally fine. You get up, you learn from it. You're free. I think the best teachers are actually your failure. That whoever said that was absolutely right, and that's how you do it, right? I mean, you failed, you like something, you don't like something, you basically try everything out. That way, you know what you're good at, what you're not good at, and you do not have the fear of missing out on anything. So I guess at least in my viewpoint, I would actually say that I have no regrets, and I believe that all of my experiences together have actually helped me get to where I am today. And I'm hopeful that it would probably play out the same way in the future. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Hanutosh. All good things come to an end, and so does this in this very interesting podcast. I'm personally like, and I've told you before, I'm quite amazed and delighted at the same time that I've seen you from working in a small consulting IT consulting firm in Dubai, and now you're in the big league in investment banking on Wall Street. So kudos to you. I think, of course, a lot of
Thank you so
all the
much.
credit goes to your attitude and aptitude, and in terms of learning and networking and the mindset, right? The mindset of not
Of
giving
course.
up despite failure in level 1, for example, or
Yeah.
not getting into IB in the first shot,
Mm.
or not many MDs not replying to your approaches towards them. This is part and parcel of life. I think you need to have a growth mindset. You need to be mentally tough. And I think these are all great lessons for youngsters around the world
Mhm.
who want to break into finance, right?
Yep.
And I hope they learn, and I hope this podcast has been not just inspirational, but also very insightful on how they should go about
Yeah.
doing things. And I'm hopeful that, like you said, I hope it will play out the same way for you in the future as well. And
Yeah.
I think it's all about mindset. It's all
Correct.
about attitude. And once you've got that in place, and once you work your way, then success is almost inevitable, is what I would like to say, right?
Yeah.
So thank you so much again,
Yep.
Hantosh. Wonderful reconnecting with you after a
Absolutely.
while.
Thank you so much, Vinod, for having me. I think it was definitely a pleasure. And I think, as I said earlier, like, I definitely, part of my success also belongs to you. If I had not met you, or had you not guided me out, I probably wouldn't be where I am today, or it wouldn't be as of an easier transition, and be much more of a difficult transition to where I am.
That's very generous of you, but I'll accept that. I won't complain. Thank you so much, Hanutosh, and I wish you
Yeah.
the very best in your
Thank
career.
you so much,
Podcast is
Vinod.
brought to you by the Real Finance Mentor. Thank you so much for listening, and I really hope you found it insightful and inspirational. If you did enjoy this episode, please drop us a review and spread the word. And be sure to check out more exclusive content on therealfinancementor.com and my LinkedIn profile, which is Binod Shankar CFA. Let's keep in touch. Just add your name to the mailing list on therealfinancementor.com, and we'll tell you about new episodes, plus book reviews, upcoming events, and blogs. Till the next time, onwards and upwards.